Anna.
Christian.
50 Shades of Grey has taken the romance world by storm.
What the?
And in the process made a lot of money at the box office and the bookstore. Meanwhile, it's attracted heaps of criticism, put-downs, and fun memes.
So hard, yes.
It's also mainstreamed sexual behaviors once seen as peripheral and kinky, but at the same time, it pathologizes and oversimplifies the BDSM world it's partially fetishizing. All this adds up to something a little mysterious. If many find the central Grey relationship problematic, laughable, or even abusive, why are so many others deeply drawn to Anastasia Steele's improbable romance with dark, handsome billionaire Christian Grey? So what's the appeal? What's the real fantasy being presented here?
Which one's yours?
All of them.
An unbelievably rich, unbelievably hot man will sweep me off my feet and be inexplicably intoxicated by me for no discernible reason. It's not like I behave with professionalism, grace, wit, or even really do anything. I don't respond to his emails and I constantly push him away.
Actually, you know what? I would like to go home. Can I go home?
Except when I briefly drunk dial him and don't even tell him where I am.
The hell on the net.
Then head right on the nail. I'm an English major, but I'm rarely ever shown reading, barely seem to have opinions or a personality.
There's really not much to know about me.
And my only stated talent is the fact that I can package rope really well.
That's impressive. You're Girl Scout.
The point of all this is that I don't have to do, achieve, or work at anything extraordinary in order for this insanely desirable man to be obsessed with me. It's just me being me, existing, and that makes me entitled to the most outlandish affections of this man who has worked hard to achieve a lot and has many objective reasons to be wanted, without which, hots, smarts, money, I probably wouldn't want him at all. The scene of their first meeting is the best example of this disconnect between how Anastasia appears to us and how Christian apparently sees her. Here, she arrives looking poorly groomed and oddly dressed.
Are you wearing that?
Trips and dives in an outrageously cliched romance moment, then awkwardly acknowledges she doesn't have a pencil, but actually doesn't even need one because she only uses it for chewing, reveals she hasn't read the interview questions in advance.
Are you gay?
When she's surprised by the words coming out of her mouth, and appears unreasonably panicked and startled by every moment of this interaction. This excruciatingly unprofessional behavior for some reason sweeps Christian off his feet.
Mr. Grey, your next meeting is in the conference room.
Cancel, please. We're not finished here.
What is he seeing that we're not seeing? Maybe there's part of him that's getting off on her being humiliated, but more importantly, Christian is written to be her soulmate, and a man who wears Anastasia Steele-colored glasses. Since 50 Shades started as fan fiction for Twilight, it's helpful to go back to the vampire saga to understand what world of desires we, as readers and viewers, are being sold. Like her ancestor Bella, Anastasia is a pretty but mostly unremarkable every girl type. She seems to have no special qualities at all. Bella, or Anastasia, suddenly attracts the intense erotic attention of a hot, brooding man. All other women around her want but can't have him.
He is so hot.
Oh, God. He so is.
Specifically toward developing viable.
I heard he's gay.
It's that naive fantasy, which doesn't really make sense, that an ideal man should chase after us, even pursue us when we're reluctant or pushing him away. It's like our scent or our blood or some indefinable magic thing that no one else has ever noticed before makes us so special that Christian Grey can't resist us. And that's the fantasy, to discover this never-before-noticed magic that makes us special to the man everyone else lusts after. On closer examination, this aspect of the fantasy actually aligns with the long-standing romantic notion of fate, or meant to be, that we dream will magically lead us like a magnet finding its polar opposite to our destined other half. It's a lovely, comforting idea that unfortunately makes us passive and not responsible for our choices. Okay, but Anastasia does do one thing well. She's very good at biting her lip. And she occasionally chews on a pencil.
I would like to bite that lip.
It's integral to the fantasy that Christian is filthy rich. Any of the things he does, which already appear controlling and borderline abusive or stalker behavior, example, geolocating a girl you barely know because she drunk dials you,
I'm sorry, I didn't...
Stay where you are, I'm coming to get you.
What?
would never go over if he wasn't upgrading her to first class, buying her a computer when she doesn't respond to his email, and selling her car to buy her a fancy one.
Christian, this is way too much.
There's a half-hearted attempt to imply that Anastasia isn't shallow enough to care about Christian's money, but it's obviously a core element of his appeal. The mindless fetishizing of wealth and wealthy people as especially desirable and allowed to get away with behavior the rest of us couldn't justify. The money part is also laughably vague. What does Grey Enterprises actually do? What's the crisis that means Christian has to fly back and yell at someone on the phone?
Well, then tell them that they don't have 24 hours. That is unacceptable.
Before taking another sex break? And how does his career tie into his quest to feed hungry orphans around the world?
Is that something that you feel passionate about? Feeding the world's poor?
It's smart business.
In Twilight, Bella's perfect Edward has the awkward characteristic of being a really old vampire.
Say it.
Vampire.
In 50 Shades, Christian is a dom, and Anastasia does not like to be hit or punished. In both stories, the Too Perfect Man is revealed to have a dark secret that makes their relationship almost impossible. But the relationship wins out because the regular girl turns out to be this man's savior, the one who can help him overcome himself. This too is a common juvenile fantasy for many women. The idea that we are so special we can save or fix the bad boy.
Hearts and flowers? That's not something I know.
In 50 Shades, the savior fantasy is especially problematic because it's complicated by portrayals of abuse.
Actually, I'm going to visit her tomorrow.
Oh, how nice.
Poor depiction of consent, and the pathologizing of BDSM. Many read Anastasia's and Christian's as an abusive relationship. He stalks her.
Holy fuck.
What? What is it?
It's Christian. He's here. In Georgia.
Prescribes her behavior down to her diet and exercise habits.
I broke Rule 7, Clause 5.
We'll let it go.
And expects all change to come from Anastasia, while justifying his behavior as his immovable nature.
It's the way I am.
While at times the movie does recognize there's something abusive or wrong going on, at other times Christian's stalking, especially when it involves lavish spending, is packaged as romantic and part of the sexual fetish. The depiction of BDSM vacillates between laughably fetishized, drawn-out sequences of some very tame whipping and blindfolding, and a reductive conflation of consensual whipping with domestic abuse.
Does this give you pleasure? Don't.
Many have claimed to be drawn to 50 Shades because of the explicit kinky sex, yet the story goes out of its way to implicitly condemn this kind of sex and label it as unhealthy.
You'll never do that to me again.
Christian is introduced to this world as a 15-year-old submissive to Mrs. Robinson, his mother's friend.
She's a friend. That's all.
She's a child abuser.
This, combined with what we're told about Christian's early childhood,
The woman that gave birth to me was a crack addict and a prostitute.
links his desire to be a dominant with underlying perversity, ignoring that it could take place between two truly consenting adults. Consent is also shown in a confusing and disturbing fashion. Christian playfully pesters Anastasia into signing a contract that she doesn't understand, and she has no lawyer look it over for her. Her attitude makes it clear she doesn't really want any of this, but after dragging her feet, she agrees out of fear of losing him.
What would I get out of this?
Me.
As a virgin, she has very little idea what she does or doesn't like.
You're still a virgin?
The final sequence in which Anastasia gives consent
I need you to show me what you want to do to me. Punish me. Show me how bad it can be. I want you to show me the worst.
and then feels wounded by the experience, does at least capture that consent isn't always clear-cut, and even when it's given, the sexual experience might be damaging to those involved. The conflict between Anastasia and Christian lies in her attempt to win him over as a traditional boyfriend who has, quote, vanilla sex and sleeps in the same bed as her.
Why can't we sleep in the same bed? Why won't you let me touch you? Why does it have to be like this?
Battling against his attempt to turn her into a submissive.
First, I don't make love. I fuck.
We all know, since this is really her fantasy and based on the books, that the vanilla will win out. The vanilla fantasy is that he takes her on dinner dates.
Once a week, on a night of your choosing, we go on a date. Just like a regular couple.
Sleeps holding her, has missionary sex, and is constantly pleasuring her. Surprises her with amazingly romantic and expensive dates, is sensationally jealous, and buys her presents. All of this plays into relatively old-fashioned gender roles. By the end of the first movie, this is recognized as problematic, but the fact that it's being presented as fantasy is also giving into some kind of ambivalent desire to regress and be infantilized by a man. So maybe the fantasy boils down to a question of control. In a world where women feel pressure from all sides to live up to impossible standards at work and at home, part of us naturally might start to fantasize about giving up control and letting someone else take over for once. 50 Shades is nothing if not confusing, but the enduring appeal seems to derive from some strange mix of a sexy, brooding vampire billionaire trope, escape from what relationships are really like, and the bizarre yet satisfying humor that results from the ridiculousness of it all.
Oh, the possibilities. I can't believe I'm doing this. My inner goddess roars.
Sliding my fingers under the waistband, feeling the hair on his oh so happy trail.
50 Shades of fucked up.
I cannot honestly believe that people read this crap.